We've all probably heard disparaging remarks and misconceptions regarding artists. Being an artist, you probably felt discouraged, as if pursuing your art career was probably a bad idea or somehow you would fail. People might see us as snobbish or perhaps loners who can't get anything done, or that we should just quit what we're doing and get a real job. Well, with that, I'm Veronica of Paint My Moments, and here are top 10 misconceptions about artists. Number 10. Anything can be art. An example of this falsehood could be with French artist Marcel Duchamp. And while he didn't make every one of his shovels art, just the ones he labeled as art. Another aspect to remember that not everything an artist makes will necessarily be art. Sometimes they could be practice or sketches or even, from the artist's perspective, failures, and they don't acknowledge it as art. An example would be like an object that randomly evokes an artistic reference is not necessarily art. See the workers on the side of the road painting up some graffiti on a wall, and those different colors squares on the wall make some sort of artistic reference? Well, maybe they can seem that way to you, but the intent was only for cleanup and has no intention of being art in itself, and therefore by context and intentionality, it is not art. It's often more of a matter of intent rather than subjectivity or your opinion, although it's not to say that objects not intended as art can be seen in artistic vein, but doesn't necessarily mean they retain the label of art. Another aspect to this myth is when someone says, anyone can do that, as they say to a very simplified painting in a museum. The difference, or in this case, response to such a quote would be, but you didn't. Even if it's a really simple canvas painting of a single color on a wall and in a museum, no one else but that person made it and got a museum to accept it. So just because it is very simple to do, or it looks like any child can do that, does not necessarily mean it's not necessarily art, or that anyone can do it, because if that were true, everyone would do it. Number 9. Artists are discovered. This myth is usually defined in terms of the fine art world, although it can refer to other commercial areas. But those at the top of the art world aren't necessarily the best artists. Usually, these people are those who know the right people or are really good at marketing themselves, and that's usually how they build up their career and get discovered. The concept denotes that talent will be recognized and lead to a successful art career. But this is no guarantee. The concept of a discovered artist denotes that any artist with really good talent will automatically be recognized and be led to a successful art career. But this, unfortunately, is no guarantee. The untold story is that even relatively successful artists spend years developing their business and body of work. And they might not always be making money at first. Sometimes they're establishing their base, a clientele, recognition, portfolio, and more. Artists with careers usually weren't discovered either, but rather spent a lot of time and effort getting to where they are. It usually is more like a build-up, as if you were walking up the stairs and build upon what you did previously. It does take a while, but many have ultimately led successful careers through a lot of effort. Only in the most rarest situations might someone actually be discovered, but that is not how most artists, especially those who are successful, that is not usually how they got there. Number 8. Art majors are easy college majors. Ignorance is key to this one. Many people assume that an art major isn't so hard or basically easy compared to a business major or many other majors such as engineering and such. Here's why that's wrong. Many colleges have unit requirements for fine art that are actually greater than most other majors in their program. For example, when I was getting my BFA at Cal State Fullerton, the unit requirement for my major was the second highest in the whole school, second to engineering. Also, many art majors can roll their eyes at the other majors' workloads. You got a test to take and have to study for it, have to fill out these questions for homework. We don't even get to study. It's all projects and artworks and deadlines. And since you can't always plan ahead on how long it will take to actually do a piece of art, you usually have to budget more time and do a lot more work in the process. There's no easy way to get a good piece of work done. One of the most common things that artists will tell you about what we call deadline hell. That is usually when multiple projects have deadlines very close together, and basically we kill ourselves just trying to complete it on time. Now here's the final kicker in terms of art majors being easy or not. They're not cheap. While other majors might spend around $300 to $400 on textbooks, we will also spend the same amount of money on art supplies, which being consumables means we will usually have to buy more later on. This goes up even more if there's software involved, such as Adobe Creative Suite programs. So basically, art majors in most colleges are basically not easy degrees to get and take a lot of time, money, and commitment to do well in. Number 7, technology will replace artists. Perhaps a more accurate idea for this should actually be that technology can make art more varied and accessible to the average person, rather than necessarily replace artists entirely. It can be easier to have programs that can help people make something creative, such as a flyer for an event or modifying a photo. But that doesn't mean technology can replace artistic ability. An artist can still use the same resources and create a much better flyer than the amateur. An amateur can still create something nice and it can look very artistic, but an artist or graphic designer can usually do an even better job. Also, the technology sometimes depends upon what it is you're trying to accomplish, although it does make certain aspects of art easier. So while it is welcome in many aspects of art, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to replace it. Number 6, people prefer cheap over good art. Now, there is some truth to this. Not many people can always pay for a lot of good art or even high quality art, but that doesn't mean people prefer cheap to good art. A lot of times, since this is a more luxury good than a regular consumable or necessity good, not as many people are willing to spend their extra money on, say, artistic items or paintings and such. But when they do have some money to spend, they do try to find art that they both like and can still afford. Luckily, many artists work hard to create a range of good art at more affordable prices. You might see them at, say, a craft fair or artist alley at a convention, as basic examples, or on an Etsy shop online. They may not be cheap at first, but they're usually not expensive either. They just might seem more expensive than a usual good you might buy at a store. It becomes more of what you like and what you can afford. Those two have to be taken into consideration when people get art that they enjoy. And these are one of those mathematical problems artists come across with trying to be able to sell their art at a way that they make money in. Number 5, artists are loners. While many artists work while secluded from others, if you look deeper, you see that they also stay connected with the community. After all, they still need to keep in touch with their market if they want to sell their work. It's hard to be innovative when isolated as well, as inspiration can often come from everyday activities or going out to be with people or just having experiences. Even back-to-nature artists need to communicate with their dealers to help sell their art. Life experiences can develop an artist, like with Picasso and his romantic exploits, heartaches, trips to Africa, and effects of war and suffering in his home country are all represented in his various styles of paintings. You can see them as they change over time. Isolationism or just being away from others would not have led to these kind of styles or developments in his work. Also, many artists are very sociable. They join groups and go out and hang out with friends and family. They go to conventions, they go to meetups and more. They have activities and hobbies too. They can be just like anyone else, so being a loner is certainly not a trademark of being an artist. Number 4, Los Angeles and New York are where artists succeed. While many big-time art galleries are indeed in Los Angeles and New York City, but that doesn't mean that those are the only places they are. Such a mindset can even limit potential markets depending on where you are. You can find an art scene in most major cities around the U.S., Although, if your town or city has limited to no art appreciation, then that available market may very well be slim to none if you're trying to set up a location-based business there. That said, popular art markets may be oversaturated in the big cities, such as LA and New York, and carving out your own section may be very difficult. However, with technology as it is, there are numerous ways for artists to promote and showcase their work and get noticed regardless of location, thanks to online sources such as Etsy, and even just creating your own simple web page like with Wix. Number 3. Artists don't have to deal with business or money to succeed. In point of fact, the opposite can be true. While artists aren't usually the highest paid professionals, they're probably the most concerned group when it comes to money. Like with any business, mismanagement and money troubles can lead to a failed business. The same with artists if they want their art to sell. Most artists will have a couple of jobs on the side to help earn income. Since artists usually don't have employees, the burden of finances and business management falls to them, made difficult by the fact that most of them aren't trained in business when they start, adding to the already insane pressure to succeed. Lack of business or finances can crush an artist emotionally and make them quit. These issues aren't unique to artists, though. Small businesses, such as restaurants and so forth, have such a high failure rate due in part to one or few people being unable to understand or cope with finances or business management, leading to the failure of the business in a relatively short time. So with almost any small business, failure rate is already relatively high, especially when it's only one or a couple of people in charge trying to do the work of many. Hence why usually other side jobs help keep an artist going during the time while they're trying to get their business to work. Number 2. Artists need to struggle to make good art. This myth is actually a bit mean. It's like the belief that somehow an artist needs to suffer to produce good work can cause more harm than good. It's really psychologically damaging to say to an artist that they somehow need to suffer or be fully crushing down with stress and pressure in order to somehow create good art. Is actually not very helpful and usually does more damage than good. While the art world can be a struggle and not all artists make it, that shouldn't deter them from trying. And just because it's hard to make it does not mean that they shouldn't try or that they necessarily won't succeed. If anything, artists should be more motivated to create artwork every day, and especially trying to create quick turnarounds by doing their best that they can each time they create. So let's put away the idea that somehow an artist needs to struggle in order to make good art or succeed, because you don't have to at all. Now, sometimes they do, but it's not a requirement in order to create good art. Number 1. The starving, struggling artist. The saying refers that being an artist means that you'll be poor, unemployed, or won't succeed. But this takes away from the simple fact that thousands of artists actually do make a living, either part-time or full-time, with their art today. It's not easy to get established, and many don't know what to do, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. Also, not all artists with careers are the same. Many people work in a commercial industry, such as a concept artist for a video game developer, or perhaps an interior designer. These industries need artists as well, and although they're very competitive, these jobs are indeed available and many of them are actually high paying. For those wanting to sell their art as their own business, the usual struggles and hardships of small businesses still apply. You need a knowledge of finance and business management along with being able to create your art, and usually a couple of jobs on the side to keep you afloat while you get it started, usually are what you need to get going. But many artists still do it, and many of them actually make it. If you go to a convention or a craft fair, talk to some of them. You'll find that although some of them do it as a hobby, some of them actually do this part-time or even full-time. And it took effort to get there. And just because you can starve or struggle as an artist, it is not a prerequisite. Even for those who have more than one job on the side to keep them afloat, that doesn't mean that their art is doomed. Sometimes that could just keep them financially going while they establish their baseline and clientele. And that's our list. Remember to please like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel here, or even support us through Patreon. For those of you who don't know, Patreon is a voluntary subscription site where you can support your favorite creators and even receive perks and prizes based on your support. I'm Veronica from Paint My Moment. Until next time.